Phthalo blue and Van Dyke red. Phthalo blue is a very potent color. If I thin it out with water, you can see it's quite a brilliant blue. Some artists don't like to use it because it can overpower the other colors in a painting, but you can also neutralize it. In this case, I'm going to use Van Dyke red, and if you add a little bit to it, it will dull down that blue so it's not so saturated. You can see that's duller than the pure phthalo blue. Now to make a black, you just add more of the Van Dyke red. It'll get darker and darker, and then if you add enough, it'll turn black. I can see that still looks too blue. I'll add more Van Dyke red. It's starting to look pretty neutral. So I've added some titanium white, and I'll mix some of that black into it. It's a pretty neutral gray. I think it's on the cool side. If I added a little bit more Van Dyke red to it, it'd be more neutral. Now Van Dyke red, I've only found it in Liquitex acrylics, but if you look at the pigment index number, it's PBR25, and I know Winsor Newton makes an oil paint. I think it might be transparent maroon. That's the same pigment. If you don't have Van Dyke red, you could use an orange to make a black with phthalo blue. Here I have Pyrrole orange, and that will also make a black when you mix it with phthalo blue. It might have a little bit of a blue tint. I don't think it goes as neutral as the Van Dyke red. That looks pretty black, but I think when I add white to it, it'll be kind of on the cool side. It's very blue, so if I add more orange, it starts to get more gray. I could also add more orange to the black here, and it'll get more neutral. On camera, I'm sure it looks really dark, but I can see this looks kind of bluish. It doesn't really get as dark as the Van Dyke red, but it will work. Phthalo blue and bad orange will also make a black. It's the same procedure. You just keep adding orange until it goes black. It's not jet black, but it'll work. And if I add white to it, that's a pretty neutral gray. Another use for all these formulas is that you can use them in gradients. And the cool thing is that you can do a gradient from phthalo blue to a bright orange, and in the middle you'll have like a neutral gray. You can use this orange to dull down phthalo blue too. If I add a little bit more, it'll go even more neutral. A very popular recipe for making black is burnt umber and ultramarine blue. When you add the burnt umber to the ultramarine, it goes black pretty quickly, and it creates a very neutral black. I'll add some white to see how neutral it is. Yeah, it does make a very neutral gray. I think this is very popular because it creates a neutral gray, and most artists have these colors on their palette. Burnt sienna works with ultramarine blue too. You just mix some burnt sienna into the blue and it starts neutralizing it. I think the burnt umber makes it a little bit darker. This is kind of like a very dark gray. I can add white to make a gray, and as you can see, that makes a neutral gray too. I prefer the burnt sienna over the burnt umber because you can get all these nice warm orange colors, and you can even do a painting with nothing but these two colors plus white. You can get a nice warm orange and all these browns, and you can get, you know, a nice shade of blue. And if you add white to all these colors, you can get a light blue, you can get a light orange. It's a very useful color mixture. Dioxazine purple and light green permanent. This purple is fairly dark to start with, so you just need to neutralize it. And most people think of yellow as being the opposite of purple, but it's actually green that will neutralize dioxazine purple. It tends to make more of a dark gray than a pure black. This is looking pretty neutral. Maybe a touch more purple. On camera, I'm sure it's looking pretty dark. This to me looks like a dark gray, sort of like a graphite color. I'm adding a touch of white to make a gray. This looks pretty neutral. I'll add more white to make it a lighter gray. This is yellow medium azo, and I'm going to show you what happens when you mix yellow and purple together. It creates more of a brown. You might call that a neutral, but it's definitely not gray. It's not making it neutral. So that's pretty brown. There are a lot of color wheels that have yellow opposite of purple, and that implies that it's a complementary color. But as you can see, it's not a mixing complement. You don't get a completely neutral color when you mix the two together. Phthalo blue, Quinacridone magenta, and Hansa yellow medium. You could use these as primary colors, but that's actually a topic for another video that I might make in the future. The way that I mix black from these colors is I make a bluish purple by mixing Quinacridone magenta and the Phthalo blue. And then I neutralize it with the Hansa yellow medium. Now this purple is different than the previous color combinations. It's more of a blue purple. So this should neutralize it. It's looking kind of green, so if it looks green, you add a little bit of magenta. That's starting to look pretty neutral. You can really fine-tune this and get it completely neutral. I'll add it to white to see if it makes a nice gray. That looks pretty good to me. Phthalo green and Napthol red light. Phthalo green is a very potent color, just like Phthalo blue. You can mix a black by mixing Phthalo green with Napthol red light. There's a fine line between the red and the green when you're mixing them. This looks pretty black right here, but it does have like a greenish undertone. If I try to add more red to it, it does make it look more neutral. When you paint it real thick like this here, that will look like black, but when you thin it out with water, like if you're painting with watercolors or if you add white to it, you'll definitely see the undertones. So I'm going to add white to this to see how neutral it is. It's not too bad. It might be a little bit on the cool side, but I think that reads as a gray. What's nice about mixing your own blacks is that they have more interest and variety. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but in the thinner areas there is a little bit of color that shows through, and that can make your paintings more interesting than just using a flat black. Phthalo green and Quinacridone red. This is pretty much the same formula as the previous recipe, but if you don't have the Napthol red light, you could substitute Quinacridone red. In fact, these are the two colors that Gamblin uses to make their chromatic black. I find that they don't create a completely neutral black like I said in the last segment, but that might be good. It's nice to have some variety in your black areas of your paintings. It does make a nice transparent black. When you put it on full strength, it does appear to be a black, a pretty neutral black. I'll add white to it to try and make it gray. It does look fairly neutral. Ultramarine blue, Pyrrole red, and Hansa yellow medium. These are pretty close to what the traditional primary colors are, and I use the same strategy of mixing the blue and the red together. And as you can see, it does not make a very pure purple. So I like to use the transparent yellow because I think the more opaque yellow will make it lighter. It kind of behaves like a white. So I'm just trying to balance this out. It looks too red, so I'm going to add some more blue to it. It never really gets completely black. On camera it looks blacker, but in person it definitely has like a dark gray, a very dark gray appearance. I think that's about as close as it'll get to black. I'll add some white just to make it gray. It looks fairly neutral. Might be on the blue side a little bit. Now instead of the Hansa yellow, I'll try Cadmium yellow light, and that's more opaque, and we'll see what the difference is. I really should have started with the blue and the red first, but that's okay. So that looks green to me. I'll add more red to it. That was probably too much red. Now I'll add more blue. It's just a matter of balancing out the different colors to make it neutral. This is probably as close as it's going to get to being a neutral black, but this is definitely lighter than the previous version, and I believe that's because the cadmium yellow is more opaque. It sort of behaves like a white. I'll add some white just to see how neutral the gray is. It's not too bad. So that's 11 different ways to mix black. I have other color mixing videos. You could check out my playlist on color mixing and color theory and watch my other videos. Thanks for watching.